Hi, my name is Julie Nelson, and my research centered around the following question: is the whole language approach to reading effective? Now, before I get started, I'd like you guys to take a minute to reflect on how you learned to read. If I was there, I would have you take out a piece of paper and actually write it down. But I'm being nice since this is on video camera, and I just want you to take a minute and reflect on how you learned to read. I know we did this, I believe it was in Tina Flesher's class last summer. She had us kind of write a brief summary of how we learned to read. So I'd like you to maybe think back to that, and how did you learn how to read? So just think about that for a minute. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most of you thought of some sort of a phonics-based program. You thought about how you learned the letters in the alphabet, and then you thought about connecting letters to sounds. And once you learned what sound each letter made, then you connected letters together to form words. So I'm guessing that's what the majority of you immediately thought of when you thought of learning to read. That's how I learned to read. That's the first thing that comes to my mind when we talk about students learning to read. And that's what I thought was the most effective way to learn how to read, is just by learning the alphabetical principle. But there is another method. The other method is called whole language. Now, whole language is where students are immersed in reading. They basically pick up their reading skills as they hear others read, maybe echo reading with the teacher, choral reading, reciting chants or poems to learn emphasis on words and then practice that emphasis. That's pretty much a whole language theory. So now what I would like you to do is take a minute and reflect on your favorite reading activity when you were a kid. Again, if I was there, I'd have you write this down, but since I'm not, I just want you to think about for a minute, what is your favorite whole language activity, or not whole language, what was your favorite reading activity as a child? Think back to your reading days. And if you can't remember, that's okay. Maybe think of an activity that you use in the classroom now that is your favorite thing to do with your students when you're reading. So just take a minute and think about that. And I'm going to go out on a limb again and say that the majority of you described a whole language technique. I did. When I thought of this sort of thing, I immediately went to read alouds. My very favorite thing as a student was learning or listening to my teacher read to me. And so that was what I thought of. You guys probably described something like, or thought of something like popcorn reading, a read aloud like I did, or maybe a guided reading program. It, I'm sure, had nothing to do with phonics or phonemic awareness. That's just not, when people think about fun with reading, phonics and sounding out letters is not the first thing that comes to mind. And coincidentally enough, every student that I interviewed felt the same exact way. Each and every one of them described how they learned to read using phonics. They all described some sort of phonics-based instruction. However, when asked what their favorite activity was, it was absolutely hands down some sort of a whole language activity. In my lit reviews that I did, most of the information that I gathered supported whole language. It talked about the importance of it and how the instruction was necessary. Every single researcher in everything that I read felt that even though whole language was beneficial, it absolutely had to be supported by some sort of a phonics-based program. That students definitely needed the foundation of phonics to build upon, and then bringing in whole language as I guess, coupled with phonics to create a whole reading experience. The one research study that I did encounter said that whole language would probably be used almost exclusively exclusively in the classroom if teachers were better trained, and that would involve more funding, and that gets into a whole nother issue. So therefore, they all agree that you need whole language and phonics coupled together. Now, I had always thought that phonics-based instruction was the only way to truly teach kids to read. But after researching further, I do believe that an effective reading program is one that combines both phonics and whole language. Each of the 3 teachers that I interviewed, without question, stated that whole language was not effective by itself, that it definitely needs to be supplemented with phonics and with grammar for the older students, because when you think of phonics, you automatically think of kindergarten, first graders, first getting their letter sounds down. But as the students go up in grades, then it kind of turns into a grammar thing, and kids need grammar. And so they all agreed that they would supplement phonics and with the whole language program. I feel that the most effective way to teach reading is to combine the 2 programs. You need the phonics to build your solid foundation, and then you can use the whole language to give the students real-life experiences and to engage them. As your reflections showed, what you told me in the beginning, or what you thought of in the beginning, and what my student survey showed, was that all of your favorite activities, reading activities for the majority, were more than likely a whole language activity. This is the type of thing that we need to use to keep our students interested. So you can use whole language as a engagement piece, and one that will bring them into the stories and actually be able to connect those to their lives so that they remember things, but you need to have that foundation of phonics and grammar. So I will definitely combine phonics-based instruction and whole language instruction in my classroom. It's something that I think I was doing all along, but didn't realize that it was called whole language. I just figured it was just reading. So to answer our initial question, is the whole language approach to reading effective? I believe that yes, resoundingly it is effective, but only when it's coupled with a phonics program that you can use to build your foundation, because once you have a solid foundation, then you can kind of go up from there and bring in real life activities and engagement for your students. So I believe that yes, it can be effective when coupled.